and welcome to Gitarrpodden. I'm talking, that's the guitar podcast in Swedish, and today I'm talking to two of the guys from Transatlantic Radio, Victor and RJ. Welcome, guys.
Hey,
thanks for having us.
Good to be here again.
Yes, it's actually, you've both been on my last podcast, Guitar Geeks podcast. Me and Vivian actually we did a visit at RJ's place, and Victor's been on it here in Sweden.
Yeah.
I remember we did a 2-hour podcast, and Danne, who's such a nerd, I even got him, I think, bored because I was talking about how many rounds with a wire around pickups of the magnets on old Yamaha basses.
That's like, great.
I think you I out-nerded the nerd.
Yes, you did. I love it. And I've never had a guest that was so prepared. And you sent me like a document with details about all your bases and stuff. It was, it's a great episode. Yeah.
It was the pandemic, and the first 2 years of the pandemic, I wrote these songs and I went for long walks listening to every episode of your old podcast. So I was like, when you had me on, I was already like a psycho fan, you know?
I love it.
You were the only person that ever did a tour of my studio.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Like a full tour.
I actually filmed that with my phone. I remember that now. Yeah, that's true. So, and since then you've moved. We talked about it a bit. Yes.
I moved back to the West Coast, so now I'm on the same time zone as Victor, but I'm in Portland, Oregon now.
Yeah. So you're a couple hours north?
Yeah, what is it, like a 3-hour flight probably from LA?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a bit.
Yeah, by American standards, he's just one state up from me, but by Swedish standards, it's like driving from Malmö to Kiruna.
Yeah, or flying to Morocco.
Yeah.
Really?
No, but living in America for 30 years, like your sense of distance gets warped, especially out west, because it's so far between places here.
Yeah, of course.
So like, of course I'd fly to Portland before I drive, but if somebody said I had to drive, I'd be like, okay, I'll be there late tonight type of a thing. It's not a big deal, you know?
Yeah. Cool. So Victor, you started this project, right? It's your brainchild or music love child, or
it's definitely a love child and a love letter to, you know, being 13 or 14 years old before you thought too much about everything and worried what was cool and all that. I can hear the kid in me in these songs, and I dig that. But I started it. I think I saw a lot of posts from Swedish musicians early pandemic. The Swedish government weren't doing enough for unemployed workers in the arts. And living in America, you'd think, there's no help from public funding because we're such evil capitalists. However, the state of California, not only did they have unemployment, they also had certain extra grants and loans and stuff for people during COVID, and especially people working in the arts. So even though it sure wasn't enough to get rich, it was enough to not worry about work for the first time in my adult life. You're not a freelance guy, sort of, and that kind of freedom and the fact that you weren't allowed to leave your house. My first thought, weirdly, was every time I produce an album, I hire engineers, and every time I use a DAW, any kind of music recording software, it's just 2 channels to record bass for people. I know how to arm 2 channels, record an amp and a DI, and I know how to throw on some plug-in compressors and send the tracks off to whoever ordered the track from me. Except for that, I'm like a 5-year-old with DOS. And I was like, at the time, 46 years old. And I'm like, this is not okay. So I said, let me try to practice my Logic software. I don't feel like it. I don't want to, but I have to. And so the first day I opened Logic to sort of learn more about the software, I just picked up a guitar, which I am not a great guitar player at all. RJ would tell you he's listened to hundreds of hours of
good.
playing.
You're good.
But like I picked up a guitar and that first song just came out. And the reason it just came out and the reason I recorded it was I didn't think a single person would hear it except me. because it was just for me to train. And when you don't worry about anyone ever hearing it, you don't think about it being cool, and it comes out very pure.
Yeah.
And I had never really thought about music like that in my life. Since we do it for a living, it's hard to put all that
Yeah.
aside. And but that first song just fell out of me, and that's how it started. And of course, RJ, Fred, the drums at that time, Chris, the drummer, wasn't involved yet because the drums were programmed.
Yeah.
But RJ and Fred are both super busy dudes. And I'm like, there's no way they're going to sit and play on like 80s rock songs when they have real stuff to do in like a year. But after that first song, RJ sent me a track, just a very simple, basic track of another song. And then I started on another song too, around the same time. So we were about 3 months in. And then I realized, okay, I don't know if this is going to ever be an album, but it's definitely more than one song, and it's too fun, and I'm learning too much to not do it. And again, there was nothing going on in the world for a year. So I
Yeah.
have the pandemic to thank for, but that's how it started. It started with me being embarrassed for my shitty logic skills.
That's great. I
Yeah.
love it.
I think the pandemic really, for all of us, was the kind of the spark that made this happen, because, when Victor used it as a way to get more into learning how to home record in Logic, I was going through the phase of getting into like 80s pop guitar and tones and sounds. So it all kind of, it was perfect timing between
Yeah.
all of us as far as like what we were into during the pandemic, So like, of course I was excited to like lay down guitar parts for this type of music, because I'm like, yeah, I have all my stuff dialed in. I've got all the sounds ready to go. I've got like my head. That's where my head was at, as far as like, I want to play like these guys, Dan Huff, Mike Landau, Steve Lukather. And
Yeah.
so it was just like, it got the ball rolling, and the momentum was there.
That's really cool. When did you guys, Victor, did you sing on the demos for the songs in the beginning, or?
No, I mean, I sing a lot of harmonies on gigs. I have a very
Yeah.
high voice. Like, I have 5 less notes on my bottom register than most guys, but then I have 5 or 8 extra on top. So I do the Michael Anthony thing when I play live. I can really sing high, but it's not that pretty. And um, I'm a huge fan of singing, so I was trying to not sing on the demos to save my fellas' ears. So, but I am Swedish, so I'm a melodic OCD person. The melody is what the melody is, and there's no wailing around the notes or anything else. So I would play a cheesy keyboard sound to indicate the vocal melody, where, so that's how I've done it for a long time. And I just sing a bunch of the harmonies on the records, but for the demos, I play the vocal melody on a keyboard for the guys to know what it is, because I think if you're like, we are all accompanists for a living. We play behind songs more than we play instrumental music or solos.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what the melody is, I mean, I have done home recording for people where I've recorded a bass track to a track, and then I hear it finished with a vocal, and I hear the vocal, and I go, I would have played completely different if I knew that lyric, if I knew those melodies. And this stuff is just like pop music. It's about those simple, big melodies, nursery rhyme melodies. So yeah, I would play them on keyboard, even on the earliest version of the demo, if there was a vocal melody, so the guys would know what it was.
Yeah. Great melodies, by the way.
Thank you.
I have the privilege of I've been listening to the album now in my car for a couple of days, and it's like, it's kind of like Hysteria. It's only singles. For
Well,
real.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. No fillers.
Somebody said that, and I think that's so cool, because once again, now I haven't done. I wrote most of the material, but I have co-writers on a bunch of it. RJ being one of them, and I've never fancied myself a songwriter. So for me to say, "Oh, I'm not really a songwriter, I just happen to write all singles," I wouldn't say that. But I know, as a fan of AOR, and I made this album much more as a fan than a real producer or an artist. I just wanted to make the kind of music that if I was drunk driving in my car late, after a few beers, which you shouldn't do, but I live in America, so it happens. Uh, but if I was driving late at night in LA after a few beers, what would I want to listen to as a fan?
Yeah.
So when I was, trying to get too fancy with parts, or when I was like, oh, the other musicians will like this. And I'm like, shut that down. Make music as a fan. I want it, even though it has layering and it has key changes, I still want to speak of your hat. I still wanted it to have that AC/DC directness,
Yeah.
And so all the songs are singles in the sense that I, as an AOR fan, have a bunch of albums I love that have 5 or 6 songs on it I'd kill for, and for even my favorite AOR albums of all time have a few duds. And I'm like, well, I just want to try to make a record where myself, I don't feel like there are duds,
Yeah.
So that was it.
Mission accomplished, I'd say.
Oh, thanks.
No, and all you mentioned the key changes and stuff. That makes me really happy too, because listening to a lot of modern both pop and country music, it's there's not that much excitement going on in the chord world, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's no, I like that a lot. It's from actually some of the stuff makes me think of like boy band modulations, and I think a lot of that came from like a guy like Max Martin. He wrote AOR before he started writing boy band stuff, so that's probably where he got it from. The key changes for pre-choruses or choruses or yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. All these pop people ask Max Martin, like, oh, you're the biggest songwriter and producer of all time. What did you grow up on? He goes, don't ask me about my taste, because you're not going to get any cool answers. My favorite band is Def Leppard. He says it to this day,
Yeah.
And so, but I tell people, I said it the other day in another podcast, AOR to me is pop music with heavy guitars, right?
Yeah.
So if you think of it as metal, where the riffs are the most important thing, or where the instruments, no, it's not. It's pop. It's, if you have to write a melody that's
Yeah.
killer, and
Yeah.
it has to be a pop melody, and it has to be boy band, and then you kick it in the ass with some pick bass and some Rockman guitars, and all of a sudden it's not pop anymore. But
Yeah, it
again,
has to.
yeah.
I was gonna say this. I guess to your point, the song has to hold its own when it's stripped down.
Yeah.
As far as like you can play an acoustic guitar and the vocals, and it would sound like a pop song, or a piano and vocals, and it would still sound like a pop song. And then we fill it up with the drums and the synth and the guitar and stuff.
But how did it evolve from being I need to learn Logic into being an actual band? And you made some gigs, I know, as well, here in Sweden last
We
summer.
played 2 gigs in Sweden a year and a half ago, July 24.
Yeah.
And RJ was all set to go and got COVID for the first gig, and then he bought himself another ticket, and the COVID didn't go away, so he lost out on the second too.
Oh, I'm so sorry, man.
But those gigs were kind of instrumental for us, I think, because we were playing, of course, the first gig was in Malmö it was an AOR festival. People from all over the world are there. It's maybe 500-600 people, but they are all AOR nerds. So instead of it felt like a club or a bar, like a normal rock gig, it felt more like a classical symphony or something. People were listening. Even if they never heard the songs, they didn't go buy beer. Everyone was listening. And I felt and even the songs that we had only demoed at the time, and we tried playing them live before even knowing really what the parts were, people responded with such, I just want to say kindness. Like, it was overwhelming how fellow AR nerds responded to stuff they'd never heard. And I think our keyboard player, Fred, who's been a composer for 25 years and plays like live at the Baked Potato twice a year, except for that, he doesn't really play out much. I think he was the guy that after the first 2 shows in Sweden, the second show was a festival in Karlskrona, my hometown, opening up for Veronica Maggio and Mel C from the Spice Girls. So it was,
Yeah.
a big show for a bunch of people that were like 21 years old, girls who don't listen to dad rock, which is what this is, let's be honest. And that crowd was a complete separate demographic, and they were also super kind. And I think after that, Fred, the keyboard player, I don't think he was so maybe against playing live, but then he was like, yeah, I love this. I've never played songs that I helped to write and make live and have people go nuts. And I think he just had sort of a revolution that it could be that fun. So after those 2 gigs, I think is when at least Fred and me thought that, hey, if we do a few gigs a year for fun, it might be a real band thing. Because at first, when we started making the record, I said this will just be like a studio project. But yeah, the live experience, the little we had, it just worked so well. I at least want to do more. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And you got a gig in Italy, right? I saw that on your Instagram in May.
Yeah. It's the Frontiers, the label that we're on, and they have a wide variety of Swedish AOR and metal bands, and their festival in Italy is what we're playing. And we just got signed, and our album's coming out in next month in February. So our album will be 2 or 3 months old when we play that gig. And I figured, even though it doesn't really make sense from a business standpoint to go over there and play the Labels Festival, first of all, we get direct access to, again, just the people who care about this kind of music, not even heavy metal or any adjacent genre, specifically this stuff.
Yeah.
And also, I think I just wanted everyone on the label to get a chance to really experience it. And I figured, well, maybe if they see us live, they will work a little bit harder promoting our music. That was my whole thought. But I can't wait to go to Italy with the guys. Yeah.
Cool. So the rest of the band, can you guys tell me about the drummer? Who's the drummer?
Yeah.
Chris.
It's Chris. Chris is from Australia, and he moved to the US, I want to say around 10 years ago, in his late 20s, and immediately got a gig with a rock band, Filter.
Okay.
And then from there, I met him in Hollywood just at some jam nights, and we did some cover gigs together. And I was astounded that a younger guy who looked like a skate rocker or an alt metal guy could play such simple, beautiful, like Phil Rudd style drums, where the song was everything and showing off was nothing. It's just a drummer with no ego, but a lot of attitude, which is a hard combo to. So I fell in love with his drumming and him being the easiest person in the world to deal with to this day. And he landed gigs after that with Avril Lavigne, which is what he's still on. And she tours a lot, and it's all arenas and all over the world. And he also plays in Tom Morello's solo band from Audioslave and Rage Against the Machine. So that's Chris. And I mean, we can nerd out about how we made the record, but he's only on 2 songs on this record because he came in later in the game. And even when we had him, my feel was I didn't want the record to sound like it was made over too long of a period or made, I wanted it to feel cohesive. So, and also the records that I wanted to emulate, we're talking what Mutt Lange did in the late 80s and early 90s, Waking Up the Neighbors, Bryan Adams, that's all Fairlight programming with live cymbals and hi-hats. And so, and also Hysteria, obviously, is the biggest. And that's also, a fake drum sound. So even though Chris, as a band member, is the most badass one, arguably, he's not on the record that much. So that's him. Fred on keyboards is the guy that me and RJ met in Miami in college.
All right.
30 years ago.
Gosh,
1996.
wow.
1996, 30 years ago.
Imagine you
And
guys were only 4 years old.
well, those guys were like 18 and I
Yeah.
was like 21 or 22. And I dropped out of Miami after 10 weeks, just one semester out of the whole 4 years. But those guys stayed. But in those 10 weeks, uh,
We
as a
played a lot
shout,
together
yeah, yeah,
in class and outside of class.
Yeah.
yeah. And it is the coolest thing that even though I had the original thought for this project and LA is filled with great rock players, it could have never again, Chris isn't on the record that much, but without RJ and Fred, this wouldn't be half as good or half as fun or anything. They're just the kind of musicians that don't do anything half-ass. And Fred is great because he co-produces with me and he can be very East Coast. He can let me know that I fucked up. And I really appreciate that.
I think the
And then
important thing is we're all on
yeah,
the same page musically and like as far as our influences and the direction that we wanted to go. We all kind of
Yeah.
agreed like it has to sound like this. This is would make it sound good, and these sounds are what we're striving for. So that made it easy that all of us were all on the same page.
Yeah, that's pretty much a biggie, even to be on the same page and have the same kind of direction, even if it's whatever, I don't know, rehearsing once every second month or taking over the world. And I guess when it's a project like this that came out of joy and love for the music, you want to have your friends on it, people you like and who loves the music as well, I guess.
yeah. If we decided we're not going to make any more music, I would still want to have Zoom hangs with these guys once a month, just because
Yeah,
they're the coolest hang.
that is nice.
Yeah.
So and how did you settle on a singer? Because that's not the easiest task, because it's
Well,
for a project like
it
this.
it goes back to a recommendation actually, because I knew Matthias because he's 3 years younger than me, and when I was in high school, I used to sort of uh, help out as a music teacher in junior high school.
Yeah.
So I knew Matthias and his bandmates because they were playing in a band in a school that I was sort of hanging out at. So we were acquaintances because we were pretty close in age, and so he was always an acquaintance of mine because you are in Karlskrona, my hometown, often.
Yes.
It has a pulse and it's not tiny, but it's also not big. So
Yeah.
you kind of know everybody and everything. So
Yes.
me and Matthias knew each other, but we weren't friends. But one of my dearest friends and one of the people with the biggest ears I know is my friend Mankan Sedenberg. He's the chief engineer at Pama Records
Yeah.
in southeastern Sweden. Uh, and he was the guy, he's a few years older than me. We played together since we were teenagers. And when I was a teenager, he's the one that introduced me to Harum Scarum, Danger Danger, the band. Even though he's like a King Diamond Queensryche guy, but he introduced me to these AOR records. And so I called him because, he records a lot of great hard rock and metal in that studio. I said, I've written some AOR songs finally, like I said I would 30 years ago. Who should sing on it? He goes, you should get Matthias from Hustler, the little the little redneck island outside of my hometown.
Yeah.
And obviously I keep telling people, for me, yeah, you can say this music is very derivative. Like, oh, I've heard this before. This sounds like something else. But the one thing when you put on our music that sticks out to me is the fact that the way Fred layers all the keyboards, because he's a pop guy. He never listened to hard rock. He
Yeah.
loves Whitney Houston and he does movie scoring. So the
Yeah.
way he plays keyboards on these songs are not the way a rock keyboard player would play it.
That is true.
And between Fred's keyboard treatments and Matthias' super husky voice, you have this yin and yang almost fighting, like the pop and the heavy metal. And even though all five of us matter to how the band sound, Matthias's voice and Fred's keyboards living in the same band creates, I'm not going to say the one original thing about the project, but the thing that sticks out to my ears.
Cool. And I want to talk a bit about the recording of the album, because there's some epic guitar tones and some epic bass tones, except for the super classic keyboard stuff. I actually thought of Whitney Houston today driving in my car. And there's also some Toto elements. What is it? I think it's I can't remember the name of the song. I think it's song number 8. It has a bit of a
Probably All For You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the one with the Toto-ish keyboard solo?
Yes.
Yes.
Guess who wrote that?
Yeah. Guess who wrote that song? Yeah. That one is written by Fred. I think I wrote one lyric line and he's like, you got to sign up as a co-writer. I'm like, no, no way. Yeah. That's all Fred.
That's all.
Fred,
That's Fred's shining spotlight.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he did some stuff I would never do. But when I send these demos to Fred and RJ, most of the time they do exactly what I played on the demo. They don't go, oh, this could be better. So Fred, those verses on that song, very Toto. But there's all kinds of stuff where the kick drum is straight and his keyboard bass was syncopated off the kick drum. Drove me nuts, but I played it exactly like his demo because he did that to my songs a lot.
Yeah.
And it came out awesome. It's different than the other songs on the record a little bit, but it's some people's favorite song, I think, because of that, you know?
I love the keyboard solo on that song.
It's epic.
Yeah, it is. It's great because I mean, yeah, Fred is very much, and Fred is most of the interviews I do, I just try to give all the glory to him because he mixes his stuff. And I don't know which systems you listen to this record. I'm not going to brag that we've made the best songs or even that we played the coolest parts, but I will argue with anyone that mix is historic. And it's all Fred. All
sounds
Fred.
Epic.
Yeah.
The thing about, well, one of the strengths I think with Fred, other than his playing, is that he's always been an encyclopedia of popular music, even from like TV jingles to movie theme songs to pop rock things. Like you could say, hey, can you play some random TV show theme song? And this was when we were teenagers back in college, and he would go in his mind and he probably heard the song, a dozen times watching TV, and he could just play it. He could get the sounds up. There's something like that I've never met in another, keyboardist or producer, that like he just is a wealth of knowledge as far as like he knows the right sounds and the right parts to play because he's so informed with, the culture of 80s and 90s music, pop culture.
Yeah. Awesome. So how did you guys go about recording it? Of course, you recorded bass at your place, and RJ, you recorded the guitars at your place. But I think when me and Victor initially talked about doing this, you said like, we should get RJ on it too, because he's using all these kind of cool special plugins and stuff. So
yeah.
Should we talk a bit about the guitar recordings?
Sure. Yeah.
And
the funny thing is, I can't wait for this because I don't know most of this. So I've been waiting for this day. Yay!
Yeah. And before we start with the technical stuff, a lot of you, Victor, you actually wrote a lot of the guitar riffs, right?
I did. I mean, I didn't write anything on bass. I don't even like writing on bass. But guitar, I have very, very limited skill set. But I feel like I grew up, trying to keep this short, I grew up idolizing Keith Scott and Richie Sambora, and I listen to guitar players more than bass players. Guitar players and drummers are my favorite thing to listen to. So when I started writing these songs, I'm like, oh, it's taking forever because I have to punch everywhere, and my voicings and my fingerings don't move fast enough. But I had listened to so many guitar players and riffs from that era, I feel like, okay, the fact that I'm not super fast on guitar might help keeping these songs leaning more Bryan Adams and Dream Theater, which is
Yeah.
obviously the point. So once I started writing guitar parts, and I've told everyone this, my favorite part of this project, because I'm involved in all of it, except for hanging out with my friends, is writing guitar parts. It is so much fun. It is so much fun. And especially those 80s cleans where you just arpeggiate and it's got a little bit of
Yeah.
dissonance in it. It's so satisfying. And then, of course, RJ, who can play anything and write anything on guitar, has been kind enough to sort of like play what I wrote and then added his own thing to a degree where everything just got perfect, you know.
Cool. What's your guitar, Victor? Your
Well,
writing guitar.
I wrote this whole album the day before I wrote the first song. I went to a pawn shop here in LA, and for about 1,500 Swedish crowns, like $170 at the time, I bought. I'll show you.
Yes, please.
This is what this podcast is for, right?
Yep.
I bought this super entry-level model of a Yamaha Pacifica. Number one, because it was there and it was cheap, and number two, because it was candy apple red. And
I love
yeah,
the Pacificas. That's so much bang for the buck, man.
yeah. So I paid like, and it's got the Eddie Van Halen, like this thing
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on, and somebody put a skull on it, like definitely not me. So I wrote almost the whole album on this absolute, I almost say piece of shit, but pretty not great guitar. The frets aren't great, but anything Yamaha, even entry level, isn't going to suck. But I, in my head, especially when recording cleans, I'm like, I would like a guitar that's even more scooped. And I'm like, now that I write on guitar all the time, I should buy myself a nice Super Strat. And then, without any warning, about, I want to say 8 months ago, RJ gave me this guitar.
Oh.
It is, I've told him it's long time borrowing because I can't accept a gift this nice. It's a Nash Super Strat, and he played the first few songs on the album on this very guitar, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong,
Cool.
RJ. And it's also in our video for Fever Dream we put out about a year ago.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful
now,
color too. Love
so
it.
now that I started the second record, I have recorded one song with this guitar.
Yeah.
Are those
And that's
EMG
actually,
pickups?
so
Those
that's
are
a
EMG.
modified, and I actually did a YouTube video on it, but I modified that guitar. Originally it came with like DiMarzio humbucker, single humbucker, kind of like a Steve Vai thing.
Yeah.
And then I put in Steve Lukather signature pickups, which I don't know why. I just wanted that sound, just like, the old 80s Toto,
Yeah.
early 90s Toto sound. And then I put a different Floyd Rose in it, and it became like what I was calling my Dan Landether guitar. So that's like a tribute between Dan Huff, Michael Landau, and Steve Lukather, Dan Landether. So that was like my LA session
Dan
guy
Landether.
guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
I finally broke down and bought a James Tyler. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
on the first 2 songs, and it's got its sound, That's like a special, I think it's the pickups, and specifically the Steve Lukather pickups really help it, but it does the
So
thing.
is it a humbucker and 2 single coils or?
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're all
Yeah.
active.
Yeah. Cool. So RJ, did you play a variety of different guitars, or did you like stick to a guitar? You mentioned earlier that when Victor started sending you demos, you were on this quest for those type of sounds, so the
Yeah.
timing was perfect.
So when we started, I had that pink guitar that Victor has, and then I had probably just like a PRS, just for distorted sounds, but I didn't have a lot of AOR guitars at the time, interestingly enough. But as far as like the sounds went, I tried initially using real amps and real effects, because I had done a couple YouTube videos trying to mimic the sound of the Rack Gear that
Yeah.
the session guys used in the 80s. You know, I did a mixture of plugins and pedals. I did a video where it was all pedals with like, you know, all the chorus and tri-stereo chorus and micro pitch and everything. But it came down to like I had found a plugin with presets that were exactly what I was looking for, and they fit in the mix perfectly, and they were actually kind of modeled after the rigs
All
of
right.
Dan Huff and Mike Landau, and that's the Overloud THU plugin. And they have we have a friend, Michael Nielsen, who's also he's a
Yeah.
YouTuber, but he also does you know, music for TV and movies. And he made a bunch of, you know, preset packs or IRs or whatever you want to call it of like the 80s session guy sounds. So like he modeled a lot of his presets after certain giant songs or
Yeah.
Michael Landau sessions with like Richard Marx, like a lot of the. And then there's also they also make a Rockman plugin, which was kind of
Oh,
the first one I think that we might have started using, because I feel like our first two singles were like well, okay, so
RJ, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you play the X100 Rockman belt pack from the 80s on the first two
on the first
songs?
song, yes. So
Ah,
the
cool.
Okay.
the very
Yeah.
first song was an authentic. Where is it? I don't even know where I put it.
That's What You Get for Falling in Love was the
Yeah.
first song.
That's
and that
a
one
real
has-
Rockman.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about. And to this day, nothing sounds better than the actual Rockman headphone amp. Like the plugins do something close, but there's something about the real Rockman X100 headphone amp that just has that kind of. It's not lo-fi, but it's not as refined as like a
Yeah.
plugin or the newer Rockman X100 pedal that they put out. But yeah, I did use a real Rockman on those first two songs, and then
Have
eventually
you
I wanted. Go ahead.
sorry. Have you compared the like the freestyle belt pack thingy to the half rack Rockman?
I have the Rockman
I don't even know what it's
distortion
called.
generator. Well, I think it's a combination. So after they put out the headphone amp, well, okay, let's get nerdy.
Yes.
Rockman Schultz put out modules. So there was like the Rockman distortion generator, there was a
Yeah.
chorus, there was a sustainer compressor. So to approximate that, the headphone amp, you had to buy multiple modules, which it's a lot cheaper and easier just to buy the headphone amp.
Yes, of course.
And use it. But you didn't have a lot of control with it. It was just like one sound that did the thing. So I actually have a distortion generator, and it's a similar nasally distortion sound, but I would have to pair it with like a chorus and reverb and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
But you know, finding the plugin, I pretty much used the plugin for the rest of the record because there were so many good tones in it that were ready to go, especially that crystally clean tones that we were looking for.
Yeah, the
that-
kind of sounds like straight into the board kind of.
Yeah, really compressed. It almost
Yeah.
sounds between percussion and synthesizer. That's how I like
Yeah.
to call it. When it's really good and it's in the mix, you can't tell if it's like percussion or a synth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
It almost sounds like the bell patch on like a Roland D50.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, but I'll have to insert really quick that as somebody involved in the mix, when RJ said the Rockman, the actual one, there's a magic to where the sound really is pretty small. The Rockman sound, there's not a lot of top, the dirty sound, not a lot of top, not a lot of bottom. And there's a magic of how it sits in the mix. It doesn't sound that great by itself, but in the mix, it like mixes itself. It comes pre-mixed, which if you ever had the nerdy honor to listen to a Mutt Lange record channel by channel, the individual sounds are almost embarrassingly horrible.
Yeah.
But that's on purpose because he knows, you
Yeah.
know? So the footprint of the Rockman, the OG Rockman, when you mix one of these songs is gold because you just compress it a little and leave it alone. And high pass, low pass, it's already boxed in for you, which I love.
Perfect.
In addition to being an 80s head and loving the sound from an emotional perspective, technically it actually has value in that it's pre-mixed.
I guess that's why they made it like that.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke and so on.
Yeah.
But RJ, let's go back to the plugin. Was it an Overloud plugin?
Overloud is the company, and
Yeah.
they make a THU is kind of their guitar rig modeling thing, kind of like
All right.
Amplitude or what have you. So you can have multiple amps, core, pedals, rack gear, all built in there. But realistically, I just downloaded or I bought all of the preset packs that Michael Nielsen put out.
Yeah.
And, he models amps, everything from old Soldano racks to Marshalls and
Yeah.
Akasha Rock Mod, which is what Dan Huff used, which I had never heard of until I bought the plugin. I'm like, what the heck is Akasha Rock Mod?
I never heard of that either.
Yeah. He pairs it with like the built-in chorus and micro pitch and delays and reverbs and everything, and it just works great. But there is a magic that I found out later to get that crispy clean tone. I tried it with that pink guitar with the Steve Lukather pickups, and it came close, but it wasn't until I bought a James Tyler guitar that has this preamp and all the special switching that I discovered that there's a magic mojo to that, which is kind of what, Dan Huff had a James Tyler modded Strat, Mike Landau had his stuff. So there's a magic setting with the preamp on 0 and like the pickups between series and parallel that really nail down that sound that you can't really get you can't nail it with a regular Strat style guitar. It's almost like you need to have
like the active preamp thing to
Yeah, because it does some special EQing within the pickups.
Is it like the snap of the sound or
So the way it works, without getting too deep into it, it kind of bumps up like a mid-low frequency, but it also bumps up a high frequency. So you get that crispiness, kind of a little bit of scoop in the mids, not too much, but it's really about that snappy crispiness that it does. So that was kind of like the magic thing. And now I have 2 Tylers that do it. Just so
you have to show them.
Okay. Well, let's see. Where's my main one? So the main one I actually sent back to Tyler to get the full Monty of switches that we call the LA switches. So you can see there's like three-way switches for each pickup. There's all these push things for preamp on, and it's extra. It's too much stuff.
Yeah.
But this I had pretty much used on the whole record after the first 2 songs. And then this second one, which is a little more bare bones, but it still has the preamp. I use this a lot for the solos because it's a little more, it's got a Floyd Rose and it's got this slinkiness feel to it. It's a little bit shreddier, I should say.
Yeah.
But then if we're talking about guitars, excuse me. This one I got
more
Gambale. This is like a 92 Ibanez. This is a shreddy guitar. The neck is the wizard neck. It's shreddy. And Victor, I actually used this on a lot of the solos for the last couple of songs because my fingers just fly on this. It's like, and this is a guitar. I had a yellow version of this in high school that I ended up selling before college, before I went to Miami because I didn't want to embarrass myself. And I'm like, a couple years ago, I'm like, I want that guitar again. Yeah. So I found this one in pink salmon.
Very nice.
Those are like the 3 guitars I use pretty much on the record. All Super Strats.
Yeah.
It's got to be Super Strats.
Of course. Do you think do you have any tips for recording when you do record direct like that and use plugins? How do you set your your interface? Of course, you use an instrument input, but do you use the gain as low as possible, or do you match it in the plugin, or
Yeah, I
that
match it in
makes a
the
big
plugin.
difference?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, especially in Overloud, there is a setting. You click on it, and it tells you where the optimal input volume should be. Kind of like a tuner.
Yeah.
You play it, and then when it turns green, then that's where you should be. So I just set it to that, and then that's kind of where the preset works the best, and that's it. It's simple. I think like a lot of it was just like not that I was in a hurry to get the parts down, but it was kind of like I didn't want to think too much about tones and gear because I wanted to keep the momentum going. Because like, you know, when
Yeah,
you're in the studio and you're clicking on pedals off and on, you kind of lose sight of the
the music.
song. Yeah, you know. And the
Yeah.
great thing about using a plugin is you can adjust it after the fact that, you know, after
Yeah.
you record it, it's like, hey, maybe I don't want the chorus on this guitar part
Yeah.
or have too much reverb on it. So I can just shut it off, and it's more flexible that way as far as production.
Did you use any like post processing, like micro pitch or delays, or is everything in the plugin?
Everything is in the plugin, but yeah, there are, you know, within the presets is lots of chorus, lots of delay, lots of reverb, and minimal adjusting from the stock presets because the
Yeah.
way that, you know, Michael Nielsen is in the same headspace, he knows the sounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, they sounded great to me. So I might have like taken down some of the delays and reverbs just, you know, for mix sake to when I gave it to Victor and Fred so they could, you know, adjust it to their taste for the mix.
Yeah.
So they're a little bit drier.
So you gave them the finished bounced file, not
I
a
did.
DIN plugin?
Did I might have initially sent like the dry guitars once, but it ended up, you know, I think we just ended up using the affected guitar
Yeah.
sound just because it was ready to go.
Yeah.
There's only one song where RJ's ever. Of course, the sounds are incredible. There was only one song. It just had a lot of high mids because there's too many parts on it. I'll be honest. Both keyboard and rhythm guitar. Uh,
Yeah. It adds
First to
up.
be the last, it's called. And so that song was the only song where I asked RJ for a dry track to make like an even simpler, even more scooped, clean sound because we had too much high mid in the mix. And I was just trying to fix it. Except for that, I think we only used what you sent, RJ, and Fred would maybe add a little delay and compress a little more, but that's it.
Yeah.
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 So the whole from start to finish, when did you like when did you finish the album, or rather what my real question is, when did you feel like, okay, we're making an album and now we have a deadline, and because you released a couple of singles first without a label, right?
Yes, 4 actually.
Yeah.
I put that first song out, That's What You Get for Falling in Love, and it had like 1,000 listeners on Spotify. It was me and my family and maybe a few guys in Brazil and 3 people in Sweden. And Frontiers, obviously, they are handing out deals to a lot of people. And their artist and repertoire department found me after the first song. And I was flattered because a lot of your good friends, Andreas, are my influences for this record. Erik Mårtensson,
Yeah,
Robert
yeah,
Sell, we're talking Wet, Eclipse, Work of Art. All
yeah,
that stuff I've been listening to on Stun when I made this first 2 songs. And then that label coming to me, um, that was nice. But I told them, I said, I don't know if we're a band. I don't know if anyone's going to have time to make an album.
yeah,
The contract, without going into details, wasn't good enough. So I
yeah,
said no. They came back a year later and we were 2 songs or 3 songs in, and I said no again. Um, and then finally, when around the time we played in Sweden a year and a half ago, And I realized, oh, there really is people that kind of like this music. And then I told Fred, who was the most skeptical one about a record deal, I
Yeah.
said, the only way to get this music and to do honor to the 5 years and thousands of hours we have in this project, the only way to honor it is to make sure it reaches the people that feel like us.
Yeah.
So signing the record deal was absolutely not a business move. It's just something I did so that we could have access to their YouTube channel, and so that people who are as nerdy as us can find this music without us promoting it.
Yeah.
So the record deal, and us, to answer your question fully, the record deal helped us finish it. The record deal and Fred having a bit of a work lull with all his big movie and TV shows, all of a sudden he was slightly unemployed for a second for the first time in 25 years. And I'm like, motherfucker, let's finish this. Come on. So that's how only a year and a half ago, 3 years into the project, we really committed to making a record fully,
Yeah.
and also like finishing it by a certain date. And we needed that deadline. None of us are lazy, but it would have taken too long. So it all
Yeah,
worked out.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a deadline is your friend when it comes
Yeah.
to finishing
For this
projects.
stuff,
Yeah.
we didn't cut any corners because Fred doesn't know how to. He was as picky on the last 2 or 3 mixes, which he had to do simultaneously in 1 month, as he was on the songs he spread out over 2 or 3 months when he only did one song. So I don't feel like the last 3 songs, which we did in a bind, I don't think they suffered much from that. I think the opposite.
No, it sounds very coherent. It sounds great. It's
Thank you.
yeah. Doesn't matter if I'm on my AirPods or my car or in my studio. It sounds killer, I must say.
Thank you. And I
Yes.
think
Thank you.
one comment about that, which Fred and I talk a lot about, if you listen to the greatest records of the 80s, which for our generation, we're pretty close in age, it's probably the greatest records of all time, we think. If you listen to the big records from the 80s, Hysteria, Born in the USA, Purple Rain, the
Yeah.
ones that sold so many records we can't keep count, what do they all have in common compared to some of the 70s rock and 90s rock? Very thin, not a lot of low end. I'm not
Yeah.
saying not a lot of bass guitar, but not a lot of low end. And if
Yeah.
some of them are very bright, Born in the USA being a good example, even though that's more rockabilly than it is AOR.
Yeah.
But me and Fred were both like, we love a lot of these bands of frontiers, new young bands making great AOR, but what they all have in common is they all have modern low end, and it does not work for me in this genre, to stick my chin out a bit. So me and Fred, when you're saying it sounds good on every system, we designed it to be punchy and bright and clear, and we'd rather have it be too thin than too thick. That was very much, and was very calculated, you know?
Yes. And I
Yeah.
actually thought about that today, listening to it in a controlled environment in my studio, because it's not having that much low end. I think back in the day you couldn't have that much low end because when you were doing vinyl, it didn't fit. It was
Yep.
impossible to have the like hip hop or modern metal low end. You couldn't do it. But
Yeah.
I actually think it makes it a bounce to the music, or a different groove to the music, because it makes it feel lighter, not less heavy, but it feels, I don't know, happier or lighter or bouncier. Bouncier was the first word I thought about when I listened to it in the studio a couple of days ago when you sent me the link.
Yeah.
Because big low end can sound really cool, but it also kind of stops the energy a bit. It's a different kind of energy.
Yeah.
I'm
And I mean,
rambling. I like sound.
yeah. Yeah. And it's like, you know, when I'm an MD and here in LA, you get a lot of guys that like their Marshall stacks or their half stacks. And I'm like, a lot of the times I have to sort of talk to guitar players politely and show them a picture of Malcolm Young's settings on his Marshall, bless his soul.
Yeah.
And the bass is on 0 or 0.5 maybe.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you want heavy guitars and you love AC/DC, all the low end is in Cliff Williams, all of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And on our record, I think the kick drum, in spite of the rest of the record not having a low end, I think the kick drum is pretty violent. So that keeps it from not being too cute. And I got to shout out Fred again. After I made the first song where I used Logic drums that I found, I used the snare from one kit, the kick from another, just completely proprietary because that's all I knew how to do.
Yeah.
And Fred got that and liked my samples, but he also knew that I wanted the hysteria feel. So he made composite drum sounds of the Logic sample I'd sent him, plus some stuff he sort of tried to mimic hysteria. And he made me a software drum kit. 2 days later, he sends
Cool.
me a kit. He goes, so, and it already sounds like Pour Some Sugar on Me. Like it's not, it's, right? So now when I make a demo, I have the finished drum sounds with the effects already pre-printed in the sample. So it's very inspiring because I start every shitty idea when I write the first few chords with these ginormous drums that are processed in the sample.
And
So
it makes you happy. You can't go wrong.
yeah,
It helps. It helps.
It actually,
Yeah, for sure.
the first time I heard the reverse snare, which we are using in every single song on this album in 2 or 3 places, where he goes, boom. The first time I heard that sample, I laughed so hard I almost peed myself from happiness.
I love it. Victor, let's talk about the bass. How did you record the bass? Did you record it at home or?
Yeah, I live in LA, so I live in a small apartment because that's what you get a house for in the rest of America. It's very expensive here. So I have a tiny apartment. Luckily, my apartment is sort of attached to somebody's house. So it's not an apartment building. So I live in an apartment, but in spite of being in an apartment, I can play loud as hell, which is a blessing,
Perfect.
obviously. So I have a 1974, I think, Ampeg SVT. And I've had it since I was like 28 years old. And it's my secret weapon because not technically so much, the sound is amazing, but emotionally, I'm sure like many guitar players talk about their favorite tube amp, this old Ampeg, it makes me play less. It sounds so fucking good that when you play one note, you just want to hold it to hear it bloom and do all the things that tubes do.
Yeah.
So the amp is magic for me because it makes me play a little bit more grown up, and it doesn't add any distortion, but it adds that tube compression, right? And I have not found a plugin I love. I have the Ampeg SVT plugin. Ampeg gave it to me. I use that for our demos. But the way that Ampeg responds, especially if you plug in a very modern, active, too pristine sounding bass into it, it will do magical things to it. I'm a big fan of, if I play a really modern bass, I like a really vintage amp. If I play really vintage bass, I sometimes like a more modern amp. I like not fitting those worlds. So I played a Spectre, 2 Spectres on this record, but there's one I played on almost every song. And
I wrote here, Spectre, question mark.
Yeah. No, it's super bright, right? It's super bright. If you play it through a DI, it's got no soul. But when you plug it into that Ampeg, it's great. And I'm one of the people, because I grew up obviously in the 80s where the guitars had all the distortion. If you listen to Operation Mindcrime or any of these records where the Spectre bass lives with the distorted guitars, no matter how many dirty guitars are stacked on top of it, if you do not distort the bass in hard rock, the pick will come through clearer. I feel all these modern metal bass players that are playing these dingwalls through any kind of dark glass distortion, which is now the hip thing to do for bass players. You get a lot of mid-range and a lot of growl, but you don't get the click.
With guitar.
Yeah, I like the click of the pick more than the dirt. So I'm a big believer in, if I play hard enough on bright strings, I shouldn't have to use distortion. And that's sort of like a hot take because that's not a big thing anymore. But playing a Spectre that sounds too clean and too pretty, but if you smack the fuck out of it and you run it through an old Ampeg, there is an EBS multi-comp going in, And the last few songs, I bought 1176 clone off my buddy Justin Meldal Johnson, great bass player here in LA. I bought an 1176 clone, and I bought this DI. It's a Groove Tubes. They don't make it anymore, but it's basically like a universal audio clone. It's a big old honk of DI. I got it right here. So the last 3 songs, I sort of upgraded my DI channel a bit to have more analog. But basically the sound you hear on the record is a low end from the DI because it's warmer and cleaner, and all the top end comes from the Ampeg. So I send Fred both channels not EQ'd at all, and then he dips all the top off the DI, so it's just this, and then he dips all the low end off the amp, so it's just the pick. And
did you mic the amp?
Yes, I'm using an Audio Technica condenser vocal mic on it.
Oh, cool.
It's like a $400 mic, but it's a vocal mic and it's a condenser. I think it's called the 400 something Pro Series Audio Technica, and it was the only thing I had laying around at home, and it sounds so good. I am super stoked because again, a lot of these songs, as you heard, some of the songs have a very busy Bon Jovi approach to the bass, but most of them I just wanted it to be the Eddie Jackson, Queensryche, like if Cliff Williams had a more aggressive tone. That was all.
Yeah. It sometimes reminds me of, correct me if I'm wrong, the bass tones on the Holy Diver album. They also have that quality of the pick attack. It's a clean bass, but it really shines through.
That it's almost like you know me, because my favorite bass tone ever recorded in any genre of music on the planet, that includes Jocko's fretless and my favorite tone ever recorded is Jimmy Bain on the Holy Diver record. If you solo it on YouTube, you can hear it's an old Yamaha into an old Ampeg with no effects, and you can hear, and this brings me back to my point about not distorting bass with pedals like everyone's doing. That mic, you can hear the Ampeg 810 because 10s, they fart out from low end quickly. So you can hear the 10, if you solo the Holy Diver bass on YouTube, which you can, it's a clean bass into a farting speaker. And that speaker farting sounds like shit by itself, but it makes it sit in the mix like it has a tiny bit of distortion. And to go off into ADD parentheses on that bass tone, what that has in common with the Spectre tone that I'm using is they're both neck through basses and they're both very high mid forward. So I own not the exact bass, but the exact model bass that Holy Diver was recorded on, and taking that tone one step further, I should say, was how I got into the Spectres. So let's see. Here we go. This is a Yamaha BB2000. This is what Holy Diver was recorded on. Everyone argues with that because every picture of Jimmy Bain is the BB3000 where the P-bass pickup is flipped the right way. But he was playing this on the record. And what the BB2000 does is it has way less low end, again, Transatlantic Radio style, and a lot of mid-range. So this is a Holy Diver bass, and it's reverse P, and it's neck through. And what I recorded this whole album on is this bass, except for 2 songs, I think. And it is reverse P and neck through. So to me, yes, the Ampeg matters a lot on the sound, but it's basically having that reverse P obviously makes the lower strings tighter and less fat.
Yeah, of course.
Which through any PA and any big bass rig, that's a blessing. I'm not saying Leo Fender got it wrong, but I'm a reverse P hardcore fanatic. So you definitely hear that on the record. A regular P bass pickup, even on a Spectre, would not have sounded the way this sounds.
Strings, is it steel strings or?
Yes, Gitarrpodden Pro Steels. And they're all sort of brand new. I think if you play with a pick, with fingers, brand new strings, it's iffy, especially recording. The whole P-bass with the flat thing always sits. Live and for this type of music, the steel strings add an attitude and an attack. You cannot EQ. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
buy D'Addario nickels, which are nice and bright, and get them super bright with EQ. You just can't do
No.
it. So the Pro steals, and I think they have like a metal bass player on the packaging even, because it's like such a shoe-in, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
RJ, what strings do you use for your Taylors? Is it 10 or 9?
Tylers.
Tylers.
On the Tylers, I use D'Addario NYXLs, somewhere between 9s and 9.5s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of slinkier on the thinner side, but that's kind of,
Yeah.
especially with guitars with Floyd Roses, I do like 9s.
It actually sounds different, and I think the distorted sounds sound tighter and more together with 9s instead of 10s.
Yeah. And it makes me play a certain way.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah. D'Addario family in the house.
That's good. I'm a D'Addario guy too. The best strings, for sure.
Yeah. I've told young guys in LA when they come up to me after I play, a club gig here in town, they go, "What distortion pedal was that? It sounded so grindy." I'm like, "Not a distortion pedal in sight. It's the D'Addario Pro Steels." It really makes a difference. It's just like,
And
you
your
can buy
right hand, I guess.
Yeah,
too.
I do the thing. I mean, my favorite pick bass player of all time is Peter Baltus from Accept. So I'm lucky enough to be his buddy now, and I've sat and stared at his right hand in his basement when he plays. But I do the thing where I kind of play across the string a little, so you get a little bit of the scrape before the tone.
Yep.
And that also compensates for sitting in the mix more and getting the steel string to do what it does.
Yeah. I love it. Well, guys, should we maybe start to wrap it up? RJ has to start working, I guess. And
Sure.
so the album is out February
20th.
20th. Cool.
But if this podcast comes out pretty quick, it's a 9-song record. All the songs are very long, so it's still a pretty long record. It's over 45 minutes, I think. But there's 6 songs out of the 9 already out. So you have 2/3 of the record available right now if you want to go listen after this podcast. So.
I think this podcast might be out next week or the week after that.
All right.
Probably. So.
Yeah, it's. I'm happy that it's a Swedish podcast because this record is a tribute not only to Def Leppard and those bands, but to your friends, Andreas. This album comes from the great Swedish friends. It comes from Eclipse and Wet and Work of Art and all that.
Yeah.
So it's cool to be on this podcast because I think that way I can officially thank everyone in Sweden I stole from and got inspired by.
There is actually one moment, I can't remember on what song, when there is like a guitar harmony that is a bit reminiscent of like old Europe as well. It's only for a split second. I can't remember the song now, but it's like I will text you guys later when
it might be City of Angels in that part.
The ending of that solo, right, RJ? The thing that got lost when they didn't do it in stereo.
Yeah, there is a harmony. I one of the few places, maybe, but it's minor, and it's like, and it's in thirds or something. It's like, yes, this is John. This is you.
Yeah,
made me happy.
So on an ending note on that topic, the last 4 songs especially, we love John Norum, but I also love Key Marcello. And in some of the biggest Key Marcello Europe songs, because the Prisoners in Paradise record was a huge influence for our record.
Yeah,
I think RJ loves it a lot too. But Key has usually one part of the solo where he plays like a Keith Scott super singable melody, even simpler than Neil Schon did in Journey. And
like a Superstitious solo.
Yeah,
solo.
there will be a section of the solo that's almost like a written little part, and then there's the whole like "fuck you, I can really play."
Yeah,
and so the last 4 songs, I wrote one of those Key Marcello melodic things, and RJ was kind enough to play them. But then they're always connected to a part of the solo that goes to a place that's a bit more aggressive and crazy. But
Right.
the way Europe set their solo sections up during the Key Marcello years, I studied to make solo sections for this. So you again are
I love
hearing
it.
the right thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, guys, thank you so much. It's been great chatting to you with about your epic new album and to see your beautiful faces again. Way too long.
Yes, way too
And
long.
thanks so much. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.